Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your not-so-noble hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. Today we will hold court as we kick off the show with my review of Studio Wit's homage to classic fairy tales, Ranking of Kings, accompanying a little deaf-mute prince on his way to fulfill his destiny. And after that, John and I will dive back into the fancy world of 19th century steampunk France's vampire society in the second season of the Case Study of Vanitas. Big reveals, new mysteries, a bunch of horny vampires, and a lot of fun times are afoot. All that and more in just a moment, so don't pause the pod. We'll be right back.
They try to hit you. They try to kick you down and out.
In a foreign land ruled by kings and magical beings, the ruler who is bequeathed the number one ranking is entitled to a boon from the divine treasure vault, a fabled stronghold brimming with untold riches and holy artifacts. While not all kings seek this power in earnest, the existence of the ranking and the ambitions of those who strive to sit atop it write this world's history and determine its future. One of the most unlikely kings to be is the young prince Boji from the kingdom of Bosse. The people of the kingdom look down on the young prince, who can neither hear nor speak. They call him the useless prince while jeering at his supposed foolishness. However, while Boji may not be physically strong, he is certainly not weak of heart. When a chance encounter with a shadow creature should have left him traumatized, it instead makes him believe that he has found a friend amidst those who only choose to notice his shortcomings. He starts meeting with Kage, the shadow, regularly, to the point where even the otherwise abrasive creature begins to warm up to the little prince. Kage and Boji's unlikely friendship lays the budding foundations of the prince's journey, one where he intends to conquer his fears and insecurities. Despite the constant ridicule he faces, Boji resolves to fulfill his desire of becoming the best king he can be and the hero his kingdom needs. So yeah, Ranking of Kings is based on a manga by Sosuke Tolka, which started in May 2017, currently counts 13 volumes and is still running. The anime was produced, as mentioned in the intro, by Wit Studio. We certainly need no introduction to their portfolio, but here it is anyway. Attack on Titan, Vinland Saga, Vivi, Ancient Magus Sprite, to name only a few, and currently they are co-animating the smash hit Spy Family with Cloverworks. And as expected from Wit, Ranking of Kings is a great looking show. It's got this neat, unique art style that is very fairy tale book-ish, that hasn't been around for a while, or at least I haven't seen it really in anything. There's some works that maybe came close to it in terms of it being more of a cartoony, loose style with some more round, squishy characters and with exaggerated body and facial features. But, you know, this really classic fairy tale storybook thing that we've had in my youth a lot from Japan, the World Masterpiece Theater stuff comes to mind. But also there were just a bunch of classic fairy tales adapted by Japanese animation studios in that time. And I remember all those shows. There were a lot. And yeah, this show looks like that, only quality-wise, style-wise, amped up to 11, because it is just such a talented studio, and it shows at every corner, like the backgrounds, the animation itself, the consistent character designs, just the focus on facial gestures, which are very important because, like also mentioned in the intro, our main character is deaf-mute. That means Boji cannot express his feelings, his thoughts, whatever, through his voice, can't verbalize his thoughts, so you have to read them on his face, and the way he uses his hands and everything. I mean, if you can read sign language, because that is in the show too, amazingly enough. I don't know how accurate it is, because I don't know sign language, but it's in there. So maybe you can garner something from that, but otherwise you need to rely on what the show is doing with the facial animation and everything. And it's great at that. It's fantastic. Like, weirdly enough, Boji is one of the most expressive anime protagonists I've ever seen. Like, really? It's fantastic. Like, they put so much effort into making him this super relatable character that you understand at any moment. Like, there's barely a sheet of paper between you and Boji in terms of relating to that character. Like, it's just, you're very close to the guy. You understand what he wants. You understand where he's coming from. You understand if he's dismayed. You understand if he's super happy. You understand what he's trying to express with anything he does. And it's fantastic. And it sounds a bit like it's super exaggerated. Like it's, oh my God, he's just basically screaming with his face all the time. No, it's not that. A lot of these things are very subtle, but they're so well animated and so well directed and staged that you immediately know what this character is about. That's a lot of what makes this show special. His best friend, Kage, the shadow creature, also kind of falls into that kind of amazing thing what you could do with animation, because he doesn't really have a face. He's basically like the small black blob with 2 eyes, 2 hands if he wants to, and this weird tail thing that he can use like a mouth. So he can use that basically so that Boji can understand him, because Boji can also read lips, and makes like these mouth animations with that weird tail. It looks like a thorny tail of a scorpion or something. It's weird, but yeah, he uses that to speak, or at least to show what it would like if he was actually speaking. So you got another character where it's like, I maybe don't really know. I have to rely also on the voice, but he also has a lot of great little gestures and everything. The way he blushes when certain things happen, and what he does with his hands and with his weird tail thing and everything. So Wit just put a lot of effort into how they could convey certain emotions, certain character drives through the animation. And they did a stellar job at that. And then you add to that all the other stuff, like all the cool character designs who are just like based on a lot of fairy tale stuff, and who are very out there. Maybe not to the liking of some of those, because, you know, there are some characters that look a bit squishy, have weird like body proportions, or really long noses. We have the sharp noses. The queen comes to mind, and her son. And, you know, some just really weird cartoony characters like you might see in a storybook. So that is also in there. And if you are more into straightforward anime designs, you know, your standard stuff, maybe this art style isn't for you. I fucking loved it. I loved every second of the show. Just in terms of watching it, I did. Not necessarily, we'll get to that, not necessarily watching this show and consuming the story, but the act of just looking at it and doing its thing visual-wise, just fantastic. Like, I have nothing to complain. And it's super consistent. I can't think of a single episode where it was like, man, the animation quality has really taken a nosedive or anything. And there's no CG in there, not that I could spot anyway. Maybe for some fucking wild camera tracking shots, whatever, which I also didn't expect from the show, because it's like, hey, here's this cute little adventure story with Boji and Kage, and they go on a trip for Boji to become a stronger prince and to become a king and everything. And then we get like these ridiculous Attack on Titan-esque battles in the show in the later point. Like, even in the beginning, you already see an inkling to what the show is doing when it is going for action. It's not always going for action, because understandably, Boji can't really fight in the beginning. But when it does, holy fucking shit, these fights. Like, they all look fantastic. They're pretty short and sweet. They're not like these overextended things. But, you know, when they happen, there is so much cool shit in that. Like, so many moments with a lot of oomph and everything. I don't know, John, if you've looked at some of the clips that I sent you. The best fights aren't even in those from the Crunchyroll collection. But it looks great.
I did watch some of them, and they were definitely hitting on all cylinders with that stuff.
Yes, and of course, that also comes into play when character designs are kind of streamlined. They're a lot simpler. There's not that many heavy line work and everything. They're probably much easier to animate, and that shows. Like, holy shit. Like, Wit just animates the shit out of the show. It's ridiculous. So if you just want a really good looking anime for your, I don't know, 4K TV to show that off or something, and you don't mind a style that's a bit different from the usual, you know, over stylized, super stylish standard anime stuff, I recommend you just checking out this show. From the very first episode, from the OP, you already see what you're getting and what it is doing. And if you like that, just fucking strap in, because there's a lot more of that, and it gets better and better visual-wise the more the show progresses. And yeah, the show is directed by Yosuke Hata, first full director's gig for that guy, if I'm not mistaken. Before he was mainly a storyboard artist, key animator, and episode director on stuff like the Hunter x Hunter reboot, One Punch Man, and Death Parade. The music is also great, done by Mayuko, who also did the music for Cells at Work. And yeah, more of a classic orchestral soundtrack for this one, but it's good stuff. And yeah, the story of this, like I said, starts off as like this standard fairy tale thing. We have our main character, Boji, who is like this cute little boy, young boy, who is the firstborn prince. He has a half-brother called Daida, and his mom died when he was still a baby, I think, and his father is also sick, King Bosse, who is like this giant, and Boji is like this really, really small bean-sized human. So you can understand that there might already be some concern in the kingdom, at least at the court of the kingdom, how Boji might fit into the shoes of his father once his father leaves this place, right? And a lot of people are more into like, hey, it should probably be Daida because he's a better fighter, and his mom, Boji's stepmom, basically, is kind of driving for that because like Daida is her son, and you might think that's the main drive in the beginning, or her main drive. And, people in the kingdom always make fun of Boji and everything, and he can't hear and he can't talk. So he is not what the people of this kingdom consider a standard image of a good ruler, of someone with power. They don't acknowledge like strength of heart. They don't acknowledge will. They don't acknowledge kindness and stuff like that. They only acknowledge strength because that's what that kingdom was founded on. That's what Boji's father was all about. That's Bosse, really. He destroyed an invading orc army single-handedly. And yeah, so that's the image that Boji has to compete with, which he intends to. That's the thing. He is not like, oh God, maybe I can become the king or something. No, he is really dead set on becoming the king. He wants this so much. He wants to be king so much. He wants to be the person that other people can rely on. He wants to protect his kingdom. He wants to do all that. That's his dream. The problem is he doesn't have the body for it. He doesn't. The people don't think he can do it and everything. So this is a journey of him trying to prove that he can do that. And his forte is he's such a nice person. He can befriend a lot of people. And again, he's a lot of will. Like, a lot of stuff can give him pause and make him maybe break out in tears for a while and be down and be depressed, like for a short moment, be like, man, fuck. But then he just gets up again, dusts himself off, and he goes for his goal. And it's inspiring to see that little animated person go for it. And he's definitely, I don't know, he was already nominated for Best Boy in the Crunchyroll Awards this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
And had I watched Ranking of Kings? I don't know, did I? I might have voted for Boji, but maybe I said I can't vote for him because I haven't really watched, most of Ranking of Kings at that point, only a couple of episodes. So maybe I didn't feel confident in it, but now I do, absolutely. So I would definitely give that space for him, probably. I don't even know what the other contestants were, but he's definitely one of the bestest boys in anime existence, and a super sympathetic main character. All the way through. Like, I never had like this moment where I was like, man, Boji, you really fucked up with this one. Even the moments where he stumbles is like totally understandable. He's not perfect, like he has his flaws. He's very naive. He's not world savvy. And that's where his newfound friend Kage comes into play, which is the other very important character. And this is basically not only Boji's story, it's also Kage's story. Like, it's a two main characters thing. Kage is, like I said, this little black blob, and is from a race, probably that. I should maybe call it that, of assassin creatures. And his whole family, like, his background is super fucked up. Like, his whole family was basically decimated, was killed. His mom was before his eyes. It's a very gruesome scene, even if she's also just like this weird black puddle. But You see her shredded body and that of his other family members hanging off like these spears from an attacking kingdom. And it's really harrowing. Like his whole background story is fucked up. So it's understandable that he's a bit of a dick when we meet him. When he meets Boji, he just basically tries to take advantage of him. He's like, hey, who are you? I'm just gonna fucking stab you. Give me all your money. And Boji is like, I don't have anything. You can have my clothes, basically. And he just gives him the clothes. But Kage is happy with that. And Boji sees that. And he's like, oh, I made a person happy. I'm gonna come back here tomorrow and I'm gonna bring him more clothes. He just goes into his giant ass castle, just decks himself into a bunch of clothes. He looks like a fucking Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and just goes out and brings those clothes all to Kage, who is overjoyed. And you know, just because Boji is also so happy that Kage is happy, Kage starts to warm up, and it's like, man, this is a really nice boy. So at some point, he just follows Boji back into the castle. And coincidentally, just witnesses a lot how the other people in the castle treat Boji. Not necessarily with condescension, like not in a vile way, like they say, you worthless piece of shit or something like that. But they don't take him seriously, and they always try to, man, he can't do anything, he can't hear you, whatever. Like, you know, the queen does that. The members of the big four, like the strongest knights in the kingdom, do that and everything. Even his sword master is more like trying to make excuses for him and everything. You see that he's not really in Boji's corner. He's just doing, you know, what he's doing because the king ordered him to. And that kind of pisses Kage off. He's like, man, Boji's trying so hard. Shut the fuck up, all of you. Right? He's a good guy. And I'm right there with him. And then the second prince, Daida, who seems a bit like a stuck-up brat, who's really into fighting and is really good at it. So yeah, the second prince, Daida, challenges Domas, the swordmaster of Boji, to a duel. And Domas is really impressed with him. Oh man, he should be prince. He should be king. He's like the perfect. He's so strong and everything. And Boji sees that and is kind of like, man, I want to show him what I can do. And challenges Daida in return. And then they have this big fight, which is not a classic fight because Boji is too weak. Like, he can't really do anything but evade. And you know, hold a wooden sword. That he can do because that's easy enough. But he cannot really hold a normal metal sword. Thankfully, they're fighting with wooden swords. But, you know, he can't really swing it with force or anything. He just can just evade, and then hit Daida after he did a successful evade. And he's really good at that. Like, he's so fucking fast. And every time he hits Daida gets more enraged. But first, some people in the court are amazed by it. Like, that Boji is so good at evading and everything. But then you see the atmosphere shifting. And everyone is like, man, this is a really cowardly way to fight. This is really garbage. Boji is a coward. This is horrible. And he's treating Prince Daida with disrespect. Why doesn't he take him head on? Because that's the only way these people can think how a fight should work, right? That's the only thing how they seen a fight work. And they, like this way of being smart about it and everything, and using your own strength or weaknesses in this case to your advantage. And they can't see that. They just see it as cowardly because they're so stuck in their ways. And the only one who doesn't see it that way, of course, is Kage, because he's a fucking assassin. They move in the shadows. They have to move quickly. They have to evade. They can't really take enemies head on because they also are weak in stature and they can't really do anything. If they're spotted, they're fucked. So they have to work with hidden weapons and everything. So, and when Kage sees Boji fighting in Boji's style, he is just so, holy shit, this is the most amazing way I've ever seen anyone fight. Boji, you're so amazing. And sadly, Boji's swordmaster is saying to Boji, that is not a kingly way to fight. You now have to take your half-brother head on. Because he also doesn't get it. And then, of course, Boji gets fucking clobbered because he can't stand up to Daida in a one-on-one fight. Head-to-head fight. And yeah, that happens. But then Kage is basically, after that fight happened and Boji is recovering, like severely bruised and battered and everything is. But then Kage goes to Boji's room and tells him, I saw you fight. I see what you're going through, and I just want to let you know I'm gonna be from now on in your corner forever. I'm just gonna be your dude. You can rely on me, and I know what you're all about, and we're gonna become friends. And that is amazing. And Boji's just fucking crying his ass off, and it's an amazing scene, and that's basically the start of the story and of this friendship. And it's really great. And we go from here. And then it's becoming slowly about a lot of other characters, and, you know, how does Boji get strong? What can he do to use his things to more of an advantage? And yeah, they go on this long journey, and later they get back to the castle, and there's a bunch of subplots happening, especially one with Daida and the queen and everything, and an evil mirror. That he literally has to use. Daida has to use the same incantation almost as the evil witch does in Snow White. When she talks to her mirror, she says something like, mirror, mirror, who's the most beautiful woman in the country, or something like that, right? And the
I think it was,
the fairest
mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, I think.
Exactly, that's what she says, and then the mirror says, not you, it's Snow White. And she's pissed off until she kills her. Yeah, and that's basically the same thing. Daida always said, who's the strongest of them all? First, I think it says the king's name, and then later it says Boji's name. Because Boji's become a lot stronger at this point. So they really throw some classic fairy tale stuff in there. And it's really neat. Bunch of little nods and name drops here and there. So that's cool. And yeah, that's basically the story. I can't say too much about the other stuff because that would go heavily into spoilers. I'll try to talk a bit about it when I come to the things that I didn't like about the story, but I'll try to not spoil it. It's gonna be hard, but I'll try. But yeah, some of the other important characters, like I said, Prince Daida, who's very driven, is kinda in the shadow of his big brother Boji in a way, but also he knows that he's physically more gifted and everything, and he wants to be the king. Wants to do what his mother wants from him, what the mirror wants from him, whatever. But he's got his own problems, psychological holdups and everything. So he's also a very interesting character. And then there's the Queen Hilling. Weird name, but I get it. I think she's supposed to be just called Queen Healing because she has literal healing powers. But they translate it as Hilling, and I'm like, what? Well, She has healing powers. Her name is probably meant to be healing.
That might also be a thing where it's like, haha, it's different enough.
Yeah, it's different enough.
So that you get the gist of what she is, but it's not too on the nose.
Yeah, I guess. But Japan usually is super on the nose, so I was thinking this might be a mistranslation. I'm not sure, but it was funny. So yeah, then there's the Queen is like, you have her pegged as like this one character. She's kind of styled after the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland, I would say. The off with their heads lady. And that's definitely intentional because in the beginning she comes across as like this stuck up, stern, kind of angry woman. And you think she only cares about her real son, not her adopted son. But just like a lot of other characters in this show, she will throw you for a loop. Because, there's much more to her character. And that's like the thing that is the show's biggest strength and its biggest weakness. This show tries to surprise you a lot. At every corner, kinda. And that manifests in several different ways. It manifests in the characters and it manifests in the plot, mostly. In terms of characters, it's less problematic. It's more of like, hey, you have this character pegged in a certain way. You think they are this character, and then later on they do something. And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't expect that, but that makes sense, and that is cool. And then maybe they have another turnaround later on and stuff like that. That happens to some of the characters in the show. You get a bit of background story, and then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get why they're doing what they're doing. I totally misread that character. That's super cool. Thank you. But also for some characters, it's like the show makes it feel like the characters are super fickle and don't really know what they want or what they're doing. Or it is because the show just is dead set on keeping their main drive, their main motivations as surprise and in the background and very vague. And you're just, why is this character doing this now? Why is this character doing this now? That's the complete opposite to what they did before. They give us no reason why they're doing this, and they're just doing it. And it's super crazy. You're like, what is that? Why are you doing this? And that can become a bit of a problem. In general, you're waiting quite a while for the other shoe to drop with a lot of the storylines. We at some point get like these two main antagonists, and they do like I mentioned before, what seems to be really random stuff. And you get all these weird shifting alliances to different people and each other. So you're wondering if there's an actual plan behind of anything what they're doing, or if they just have no idea what they want and they're just deciding on a whim. And then a bunch of other characters in that show, behave like that as well. It's like they're having a change of heart every other minute. It's weird and gets a bit irritating after a while. I'm gonna attack that character, and now I'll protect that character, but maybe I'll attack that character after all.
Jesus.
I guess it's supposed to make them look like complicated characters with a lot of shades of gray, and in some parts, in some cases, that is absolutely true, but sometimes it makes them feel incredibly inconsistently written, because you don't really get filled into what actually drives them until the very end of the show, and it's just like, I don't get it. I don't get this character. That doesn't happen with Boji. Like I said, you really understand what the character is about. You really understand what Kage is about. You pretty much understand what healing is about. But a lot of the other characters are just, what are you doing right now? And why are you doing it? The other reason might be the show just wants to throw so many twists at you that the writers after a while just didn't care if it made sense or has any impact. After a while, it's just things happening. Everyone's motivation seems to be incredibly fickle, like I said. So it's super weird. Like, the problem is a bunch of that also affects different aspects of the show, like the fights, for example. Like, most of the fights are totally badass. Like, there was a fight of one of the big four knights. I don't remember if it was big four or big five, but I think it was big four. His name is Dorsche. He's used like these shields and stuff like that, and he fights a bunch of beasts that try to attack Queen Hilling. And there is a fight between a Boji and a character called Oken later in the show. A knight that was released from Underworld Prison. That's also kick-ass. But then you get some of the battles that are as random as the characters. Like, the fight is going one way, then the tide switches into a different direction, then a special character appears, which should be an awesome moment, but you just do one attack and then get taken out immediately, like Piccolo in some DBZ movies. It's like, yeah, that's what I had to think of. Where it's like, hey, here's this character, has like a dynamic entry. It's like, holy shit, now the tide of battle is gonna shift. And they do one attack that does shit, and then they get taken out. And I'm like, what? Why did you even try? Yeah, what a twist. It's like, we had to put this character in here, but it doesn't do shit, and for twist's sake. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. Like, I expected something better from this in terms of battle scripting than from your run-of-the-mill DBZ movies. Nothing against DBZ movies, but, they had themselves figured out after a while and just did that shit over and over again. Then other participants in the fights get like this huge build-up and then are taken out or just leave before the fight even really starts. It's kind of weird. I don't know if the series was trying to go against certain shonen conventions, but it sometimes felt more like the writers were coming up with what would happen next frame by frame. I don't know if it is exactly as random in the manga, but it definitely is in the anime. And, maybe I'll try to check out the manga and see if it's different there and the stuff is more consistent. But in the anime, a lot of the shit that happens there is just weird. It's like, we got a couple of characters who start out one way, then they twist and then turn, a different direction again. And you see why they do that. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Here's this character who's kind of sympathetic towards Boji in the beginning. Let's, for example, Domas, his swordmaster. He doesn't consider Boji the right candidate to be king because of his physical deficiencies, but he likes the boy. He's like a surrogate big brother to him. He would rather see Daida on the throne, and when it comes to a vote, he votes for Daida, but he still likes Boji. But then he's torn between the his love for Boji kind of and his dedication to his king, his new king. because Daida gets crowned king. Spoilers, but that happens very early on. Like in the second episode or something. So when Daida gives him a specific order in regards to Boji, he's like, oh God, should I? Fuck, what can I do? You don't see that. That only gets revealed after after he does what he does. But afterwards, at least you immediately get filled in on why he did it and why he now is so fucking conflicted, or why he was so conflicted, or you immediately get it. So that's great. And then later he moves back into a different direction, and you also understand that, because you're like, oh, he never was a bad guy. He was just like torn between his affection for Boji and his duty to his new king. I get it. I understand it. That's fine if a character like sways in that regard. But then you have other characters where they do completely random thing, at least ostensibly, and you don't know why they do it, and you never get filled on it until like the last 2 episodes or something. And it's ridiculous, and you have to deal with that the entire show. By the end, all the character motivations kind of make sense. I can say that, so that's good. But until that point, the show demands a lot of patience from you. The reason so many characters in this show seem to do a lot of random things comes down to most of them being incredibly conflicted. Just like Domas. A lot of characters in Kage and Boji are also conflicted, but you at least know what they're about from the get-go. But a lot of the other characters are conflicted when it comes to their feelings toward other characters, when it comes to their duty, when it comes to their goals, whatever. Torn between loyalty, morality, their personal definition of duty and justice and all that. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. Actually, it's great. I love complex characters. The problem is that the show keeps the big reveals that clue us in on these characters' drives very close to its heart, to its chest, up until the last couple of episodes. Especially when it comes to our 2 main antagonists, like those I mentioned before. That means a lot of what they do just feels confusing and frustrating, because instead of actually knowing where they are coming from and what the basis for their weirdly erratic behavior is, like I said, which makes sense at the end, kinda. At that, most of the time of the show, and this is a 24 episode show, I think, or 23, all we can do is guess. And they're on screen a lot. It's not like they're background antagonists. They're in the show in every episode, basically. And every time they do something, you start wondering why they're doing it after a while, because it makes no fucking sense. Because in every other episode, it's the complete opposite of what they were doing before. It's so weird. Like, all we can do is guess. And that always keeps us, as viewers, at arm's length and makes it incredibly hard to empathize with some of these characters, or even just understand their motives. I'm not saying that you have to give away all details about your characters from the very beginning. That's nonsense. You can make it, you can keep that to yourself for a while to build up suspense. But if your show is 23 episodes long, and you wait until episode 21 to fill us in on why 2 of the most prominently featured characters do what they do and behave as conflicted and seemingly random as they behave, then you have either a lot of trust in your audience to give you the benefit of the doubt, or you are underestimating how frustrating this kind of storytelling and character writing can be. Which it was for me at a lot of points in the show, I must say. And which bumps me out.
This doesn't seem to be a problem exclusive to this show, though, because there's a lot of other anime out there that are like, it's the second to last episode. Well, the big bad was this instead. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, bro, come on. Come on. You could have... Please, do you think we're stupid? You could have built to this in a better way. Why did you wait until 2 to 3 episodes from the end of your run to do this?
Yes. And
but it's such a twist.
Yeah, it's true. And that's probably what it comes down to. Like, I feel like the writers were like, hey, we're going to surprise our viewers all the time. Or that's what the author of the manga did. I'm just going to throw a bunch of twists in here to keep the story moving at a fast pace and keep it fresh and everything. And like, okay, you can do that. But it becomes a problem if there's so many twists in there that you stop being able to empathize with certain characters and you can't see a straight line in their behavior. And that was most noticeable in our 2 antagonists. Like I said, in the end, what they did and why they did it that way kind of makes sense, at least from their standpoint. But up to that point, you're just doing guesswork. And you're just like, what is happening here? Why is it happening? What am I looking at? And like you said, this happens in, not exactly this, but shades of this happen in other shows as well, where it's like, hey, we're sticking with this character and they're behaving a certain way. And then at the very end, they're like, no, actually, I wanted this as a twist. That is kind of, let's say, not as much of a problem if it still makes sense at the end. And they, until that point, made it look like they were, let's say, friends of our main character. And you could understand why they were friends with the main character. And you understood why they supported him. And then in the end, they betray them for some reason. And then you get filled on why they betrayed them. That is okay because you have a character that's acting consistent. And you already get the feeling, oh, they're complex if their show is well written, right? And then at the end, it's like, no, it's actually that. And that was just a front. They're like, oh, okay, that's neat. Problem is if they just don't do what they're fucking doing. And you're right, we had shows where we had other characters that just shift allegiances all the time. And you're like, why? What is your end goal here? I don't get it. But it has rarely been as fucking prevalent as it has been in this show for me. It's sticking out like a sore thumb out of an otherwise great show. Like, there's so many good bits in here. Like, the animation, of course, I already talked about at length, but there's so many good little character moments and character development in here that is really good, really well written, and endears you to a lot of the characters. And then you have this main plot, this weird main plot that isn't even necessarily connected to our main characters for a long time of this story. Like, that's kind of running on the side. Like, Boji's and Kage's story runs completely separate, basically, from the mystery that is afoot in this kingdom. The machinations, the dark machinations that are happening, in the underground and everything, and the strings pulled by the puppet masters and so on. It kind of happens completely apart from that for like 2/3 of the show. Only once Boji kind of returns to his kingdom, his castle, then it all starts running into each other and come together. But it's just like, you are taken out of the show every time the main antagonists pop up. And they pop up, like I said, in pretty much every episode. And do shit. And you don't understand why they do that shit. And other characters that are related to these characters start allying with these characters. Then they have a complete turnaround, then ally with these characters. And they say, oh, you're that character. Okay, now I have to be dedicated to you. Like, wait, what character? Who are they? What are you talking about? I don't understand. And I don't understand why you now root for them. Because I don't know who that character is. Because we haven't learned anything about this antagonist. Who is that? What are you doing? And like I said, that became super irritating after a while. Because I had a feeling like the show just intentionally kept stuff from me that it didn't have to do. It didn't have to keep that from me just to make it work as a surprise. It would have been better if they built it up properly. And I saw several ways how they could have done that in that show. I just can't go into them because that would be spoilers in terms to who our main antagonists actually are and what their drive is and why they're doing what they're doing. And you could have done better trickle-down reveals of who these characters are and then put some twists in there as well into what their actual motivation was later on. And they try to do that at certain points, but it's so little, so late, mostly, that it doesn't work. And that's a shame. That's really a shame, because otherwise I thought this was a great show. This was really, had so many fun characters, like all the interactions between Boji, Kage, and their master that Boji then learns from how to fight, Despa, who is the brother of the king of the underworld, Desha. Desha. Think about it. Shift some letters around, John.
Yep. Nope. The first time I was like, wait, but then the second time you said it, I was like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, man, that I needed like a solid minute until I got that joke, and I was so angry at myself. I just raged sitting on the couch. I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm so fucking stupid. But yeah.
Sometimes it just doesn't always hit right away. It's okay.
Yes. Yeah. But I laughed anyway. But yeah, they go to the underworld and try to train with Desha, but then he's like, no, the letter of recommendation here is actually referring to my brother, Despa, who's kind of this Reagan-esque character, which is already, of course, a big, like, plus. It's like, immediately oh, this must be good. He seems a bit like a con artist in the beginning. It's like he seems to be very, I don't know, like this is all about the money and likes to pretend that he's like this cool, strong fighter when he's actually kind of super weak and everything. But he teaches Boji several important lessons, and he's just a really funny character. I think I also linked you that clip where he and Kage taste Boji's cooking.
Yes.
Fantastic. And the show is full of these moments as well. So it's really funny at points as well. So that's really cool. Mostly when these characters are doing it. Mostly when Despa is on screen. He's fantastic. He's so fucking funny. And all he does with Boji and with Kage is great. And it's super well animated. And it's fun. And it's goofy. And I loved it. Every time the show went to that, I was like, oh, thank God. This is fantastic. I love this. And then I go back to the main plot, quote unquote, the other main plot, the conspiracy shit. And I'm like, what? Go back to the other stuff. Go back to Despa, he's fun, please. Go back to Boji, he's the best boy. Back to Kage, he's the other best boy. Fuck. Ugh. And yeah, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen in a show. I should be engaged all the way through. And I wasn't at some point. Like I said, there is enough good stuff in here. The battles are great. The animation is great. A lot of the characters in here are fantastic and have great moments. Like I said, Boji, Kage, Healing, Despa, even Domas to a certain degree. Dorje is fantastic. Like, there are a bunch of cool characters in this. There's a giant fucking snake with 3 heads in there, but one head is cut off and everything. They are cool. That snake can talk as well, so it's great. But yeah, Desha is also kind of a cool character. There's some cool evil guys. It's fun to see them get beat to a pulp and everything. And the show has a really nice ending. Like I said, most of that stuff that happens at the end works. Like, it makes you understand. Like, oh, that's what this was about. God damn it! Like, the emotional catharsis at the end of the story is really good. The problem is getting there. The problem is, like, staying for the hard parts where you just don't understand what the story is about. The show doesn't give you anything. And you just get annoyed. I just got annoyed. A lot of people probably didn't, though I have heard people feeling a bit conflicted about this show. But, yeah. So, I would say it's still worth it. Like, the story obviously isn't finished because we don't know anything about the ranking of kings itself at some point, because there's something shady going on with that, of course. The first stuff is mainly just about Boji and Daida and everything, and Kage. But we didn't really get into the ranking of kings yet. And the manga is still running. So, yeah. But even if we don't get anything more, like, this story in itself, minus all the weird twisty shit, is a pretty good self-contained coming-of-age story, albeit with a big caveat in the form of very elusive character and story plot writing. But it's fine, and the ending is really good. So it would be fine if this was like a singular thing, and I think Wit is more about that in recent years. Really, I feel like they don't want to do continuous mammoth projects like Attack on Titan anymore, because it does too much of a strain on their staff, and they don't want that. Apparently, I mean, the next season of Vinland Saga is going to be handled by MAPPA, not by them.
I was going to say, they seem an awful lot lately like they just want to put their toes into one thing and then just jump right back out.
Yeah, do another thing. So if we get another season of this, it's probably going to be handled by another, probably MAPPA again, because they're just taking the left,
to be
Wit's left
cleanup crew.
Yeah, they're taking Wit's leftovers. It's funny.
Seconds.
And I mean, that's fine. Like, if Wit is the studio that gets this shit off the ground, and then another good studio takes over, it's totally fine with me. I'm just worried if a worse studio just gets the shit, like we see with stuff like Deadly Seven Sins and things like that. So for now, that's fine. But like I said, even if we don't get another season, that's good. Would I keep watching? That depends on how the story progresses. If they're done with this twisty bullshit, like if the story from now on is not necessarily straightforward, you can have twists in there. You can have a bunch of surprises in there, of course. You can have kind of vague character writing up to a point, but you can't do it for 21 fucking episodes and expect me to empathize with these characters fully at the end. Like at the end, I got what our main two antagonists were about, and I fell for them in a way, but I was so annoyed with them for most of the season and how they were handled and how they were written that I wasn't fully into it. Like, I wasn't fully, like, engaged. I didn't have, like, tears running down my cheeks, which the show kind of apparently expected me to have. Like, cry for their sake and everything, because it's some very emotional moments that happen at the end. And I was like, hey, I'm here for Boji, I'm here for Kage, I'm not here for those two. I don't give a shit, kinda. I'm like, hey, I at least understand where they're coming from, but man, it took them way too long to fill me in, so it's too late. I'm too old for this shit. Anyway, if you want to check this out, and this maybe sounds more negative now, because, you know, I can harp on about the negative points of a show more than, I guess, for the positives, but I try to highlight all the positives in here, and there are a bunch of them. If you want to check out this show and you're in the mood for like a story book, for a classic kind of fairy tale with some twists to it, this show is streaming on a bunch of services, Amazon Prime, I think, Crunchyroll, Funimation, Wakanim, bunch of other places. The core of the story is good. At least one of the cores. It's weirdly enough, it's two. On one side is Boji and Kage's story, which is fantastic. It's the best thing about this show and is consistently good. And the other part, the other core is, you know, the story of the characters in the rest of the characters in the kingdom, the conspiracy stuff with Daida and our two antagonists and everything. And that is the bad part for most of its runtime, because you don't know what the fuck that is about. And that's demanding a lot of your patience. If you can deal with that, and you're like, hey, at least I get half a good story, and I somehow have to deal with the rest, that's fine. But, you know, just as a warning, I don't want to, like, recommend you that show, and then you're like, what the fuck, CC? This annoyed me so much. Why did you recommend me this show? And I'm like, yeah, I recommend you one part of this show. And the ending, I guess. But
all right, I'll just skip 20 episodes.
Yeah. Well, the problem is it's not all, you know, it's not like the first half of the story is just Boji and Kage and then the other half is the shit. It's like they're sprinkled in between. You have like, it's split for every episode. John, no, I'm totally with you. I would have done that. It was like, hey, this is this arc, this is Boji's arc, and this is the arc of the other people. I was like, oh, that's great. I can skip that on a rewatch. Problem is I can't. But yeah, so that's a problem. But again, if the story is done with its back and forth bullshit, and we get a second season, I might check it out. Boji is reason enough, I guess, and Kage. But yeah, it needs to get its act together, because it was way too fickle and confusing and not focused in this first season, especially for its runtime. But ultimately, this is a story about the friendship between a little deaf-mute kid and a small black blob, and them helping each other to find their self-confidence and courage, and to be the best people they can be for each other, everyone around them, and making everyone around them better people by being in their lives. And if that isn't what makes a true king, then what is?
So, we're kind of sort of shifting gears from one fantasy story to another.
Yes, the other one being set in a more classic knights and kings setting, and this being set in
steampunk Paris.
Yes, alternate version of Paris, kind of. And vampire Paris with the red sky or moon or whatever I don't even know what did they call it again? Like the vampire side of things, where it's like this alternate dimension thing. Forgot.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I forgot the name too, but that also exists.
I think the alternate is like Atlas Paris.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Paris Atlas. Yeah. Also, did we touch on the little bit of alternate history from the first season? I'm not sure we did.
Yes, I think we did.
Okay.
You mean the one with the Eiffel Tower?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Just because I found that so fascinating. And
Yes.
when they were like the Sun Tower, I was like, what is that? And I look it up and I was like, oh, what if though?
Yeah, I love these bits too. Like the what if ponderings. Yes,
Yeah,
I think
alternate history stuff is cool when done well.
yes, we're not turning into weird conspiracy bullshit that's just justify. Maybe the Nazis weren't so bad bullshit.
Yeah. My alternate history story is, what if Hitler won the war?
There are a bunch of those, and they're all not really great.
What was that one game? It wasn't. Oh, I think I remember what it was called. I think it was Turning Point: Fall of Liberty.
Right. Yes.
It was this FES developed by the good crew at Spark Unlimited that definitely I don't think they exist anymore.
Lost Planet 3 fame.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Nazis basically invade New York, and it's conceptually kind of neat. Execution-wise, not great.
Yeah.
Which makes me a little sad because I really was super interested in that game after the demo they released, and then I played it and I was like, oh, we're getting off topic.
Yes. Let's get back to these vampires.
Yes. So the second half of the Case Study of Vanitas deals with Vanitas and Noe heading out to this border town called Gévaudan in search of the beast of the same name, which is this enormous wolf-like creature that has slaughtered hundreds of people. Suspecting that the beast is a curse-bearing vampire, Vanitas primarily aims to heal it using the powers of his grimoire. Along the way, the two get separated and suddenly travel back to the past, to the exact moment the beast is lurking in the woods. After a battle against the gigantic wolf and a vampire hunter, Vanitas decides to team up with Jean in order to find Noe. And despite being allies, Jean's goal is the opposite of Vanitas, as she was tasked to kill the beast, suspecting it may be someone she used to know. Meanwhile, a severely wounded Noe is picked up by the mysterious Chloe Deapierre and her servant. Like Noe, Chloe is a vampire whose existence was erased from the public's knowledge. She has been a guardian for future generations and once tried to find a way to become human again. And while Noe is grateful to Chloe for her hospitality, little does he know that she might be siding with forces far more dangerous than the beast itself. This kind of picks up exactly where we left off review-wise, which is
immediately,
which is quite convenient because usually we don't always follow the first core or first season of a show directly to the end in a review, so this works out pretty well in our favor. Except I don't think we talked about how in the last episode of the first core there was some interesting back and forth between Noe and Ruthven.
Yes, we didn't want to spoil that, I think. But yeah, this continues season review, people, so of course, as usual, spoilers are gonna run rampant.
Yes. Ruthven meets with Noe and puts a nice little bite in his neck. And says to him, he bids Noe that once, at the time of his choosing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah.
Yes,
might as well
also, but
not wholly inaccurate. Ruthven bids Noe that once at the time of his choosing, Noe will obey one command, no matter what it is. And he's basically got Noe collared for this command. At the end of this, even at the end of the second season, we don't yet know what it is. But I mean, I think we could kind of put 2 and 2 together for what he wants.
Yeah, and considering we already got filled in on it at the very first episode, what this story is kind of leading towards.
Yes.
Which is a more gruesome than ever thing, considering what we learned in this season. Which is like, God damn it, this is harsh. I don't want this to happen. So I hope the story is still like fucking with us, and it's like, no, we're not actually talking about Noe killing our Vanitas, but something different, or he doesn't go through with it. He's just trying to kill whatever, something like that. But that's still on the horizon. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. We pick up immediately where we left off. It's like the train ride to Gévaudan. And the Beast of Gévaudan is a very famous French myth, I guess.
Yeah, that actually ties into some folklore, I guess you could call it. The La Bête de Gévaudan. Is the historic name of this man-eating animal that, supposedly terrorized the former province of Gévaudan, which, let's get into a little bit of geographic history a bit, consists of the modern-day department of Lozère and Haute-Loire, as well as Auvergne. And my French is awful, I'm sorry. And in the South Dordogne areas of France. So Gévaudan is dead, long live Gévaudan. And these attacks spanned like a huge area, like 90 by 80 kilometers, 56 by 50 miles for freedom units out there. And these victims were often killed by having their throats torn out. It's weird because our crew ends up going there, and they end up running afoul of one of the other chasseurs, Astolfo, one of the paladins of Charlemagne.
And a little shit.
Yes. Astolfo is not nearly as understanding as Roland and some of the others.
No, he's very driven and has a very short fuse. I mean, we later learn why that is, and it's kind of understandable. The show fills us in on that rather quickly compared to what Ranking of Kings does. So,
yeah.
I mean, Astolfo is still kind of a jerk, but you're like, oh, I get it. Yeah, that would turn you into a character like that. That's totally reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, but he just goes straight for it. Even when Vanitas meets Roland and Olivier in a street side cafe, Olivier isn't like immediately on site. It's like he at least listens to what's going on with him. Even with Roland's worst attempts to disguise who he is by calling him a different name.
I love that scene. We get to that again because fantastic. Just the whole thing. Yes, I also wanted to mention that there was a movie that I've seen several times that is based on the myth of the Beast of Gévaudan, the Brotherhood of the Wolf. I don't know if it's a French-American co-production, not sure. Which is a very enjoyable, trashy action horror thing that I need to rewatch. I like that. I like that movie a lot. It's very out there, and someone later runs around with the sword of Ivy from Soul Calibur. No, really. But it's just wanted to mention that in case you want to see more fiction based on that fiction, on that myth. That's a movie you could go for. I remember it to be enjoyable, but I haven't seen it for at least 10 years now. So make of that what you will. I just didn't want to leave it unmentioned.
Interesting. Special effects for the creature are a combination of CG as well as puppetry and animatronics designed by Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Let's go! Yes.
It's a very impressive creature. The camera work is a bit weird in that movie, partially. But aside from that, there's some really cool action scenes, some really weirdly enough cool hand-to-hand combat fights. You know, Mark Dacascos is in this, so he's doing a good job, and the other main too. But yeah, it's a very weird and very dark story, but it's pretty enjoyable. So yeah, go for that. Sorry, tangent, but you know, Vanitas is also kind of has its foot in the horror genre because of the vampire stuff and how bloody and gruesome it can be at points. So I feel like that kind of belongs here too. But yeah, I interrupted you. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. But yes, Stolfo is, when we first meet him, most interested in meeting Ruthven's Bourreau, who we already know is Jean. And there's several allusions to a witch of the forest, who at this point, the only character that we've known referred to as such is Jean, the Hellfire Witch, which is sort of an interesting bit of misdirection at this point, I feel like.
Maybe. Also, it just feels like all women with maybe powers in this universe are called witches. Because
I mean, it is that time period, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's any one character who goes unbothered by all of this, because everyone's sort of getting everyone's goat at this point. He just wants to go at Astolfo. Vanitas is just constantly pushing his buttons. Astolfo just wants everybody dead because he doesn't care. He just wants what he's going for.
I was so worried about that because, you know, he's so blind and driven and everything that when there's this thing happening at kind of the halfway point, or, you know, the climactic moment of that specific arc with, you know, the beast and everything, that he would do something really stupid just when Vanitas is trying to do his, you know, curing thing and everything, and just bring this all to a horrible end. But thankfully he didn't kill any of the characters. Like, he was kind of incompetent. So yeah, thank God for that.
Yeah, but I mean, Vanitas, he goes probably a few steps too far, because at one point he says, "There's no way we would survive against Roland, but we might have a chance against this little girl." And Astolfo's like, "Excuse you."
I love that scene. I love also Vanitas' the moment Astolfo's like, "What did you say?" And he's like, too easy. It's like he's been trying to trigger Roland and Noe with so many times, and it's so hard for him because he can't find their buttons.
Noe, everything just sort of sails over his head, and Roland is just like, okay, you can say what you want. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. It sails over Noah's head, and Roland is just standing there letting all that stuff drip off his body with a smile. And he's like, "What? No problem. I'm fine with that. I love you. God loves you. Did you know?"
I love it that Noe and Roland, neither of them are bothered by things that Vanitas says, but because of different reasons.
Yes, so exactly. It's perfect. And then you have, on the other side of things, you have characters like Astolfo and Jean, although that gets turned on its head in this season as well. But Astolfo is really like, he's an easy target. He's a little child, basically, in terms of his mental capability and everything and growth. And just Vanitas is just like, he just needs to say a couple of sentences, and Astolfo is his arch enemy. And Vanitas revels in it. He's so happy. He's so happy that he can just manipulate a person so easily.
He finally found his true foil.
Good stuff.
Jean, meanwhile, is entirely convinced that the beast may be Chloe. And there's this giant fracas where the beast kind of jumps in and throws this huge melee between all the characters awry. And I think, is this the point where they end up traveling to the past and they see all of they see a bunch of French soldiers hunting down the beast, and they get torn apart?
Well, they're not technically traveling to the past, right?
No, but it appears that way at first.
Yes, we learn later that this is actually a time loop, kinda. Either Chloe or Johan, I don't know who specifically did it, but I think Chloe did it. when she uttered her wish. Then, started, and then we see bits and pieces from different moments of that time loop repeating over and over, and, we get filled in on what actually happened over the course of the next episodes in earlier time. When John was with her, and when Chloe grew up, and the care of that family, and with Ruth, her connection to Ruthven and everything. We see a lot of flashbacks to Chloe's past and John's past accordingly. And then, all of that kind of at some point becomes part of the time loop, I guess, at least from the moment that Chloe does what she does to protect the villagers, Johann, I guess, whoever. She has a different goal than you might expect from the beginning, and considering what she says in the beginning. Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's here. Good example for a good twist. They don't drag that out too long. They throw in enough things that make you guess, oh, maybe she's actually doing this. And then, she actually is doing that. But it's not super overt. You can still, do this guesswork along, and it could have played out a different way. But it doesn't feel like it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like they, like I said, dragged that on too long. And up to that point, the character feels like enough of a mystery, but also consistent enough that you feel like where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. Because we learn enough about her past, we learn enough about her relationship to John, about her relationship to Ruthven, about her relationship to Johann. So we learn enough about these characters to get a feeling for them, even though we might not necessarily know their ultimate end goal in all this. But that also makes sense at the end, and that's good character writing. It's like, hey, we don't learn all of what these characters are about, but we learn enough to stay engaged.
Yeah, like immediately after that, Vanitas is like super feverish, and John takes him to this cabin and tries to warm him up, and it's very.
He absolutely.
Steamy.
He can't deal with her forwardness. Absolutely not. Like
he says to her, "You wish to warm me up with your bare body next to mine." That's right. Quo?
Yeah, quo? That happens to him several times in this season. He is taken aback a lot. Like things get turned around on him. A lot of his stuff, like what he did with John in the first season, was like just triggering her by being very forward, being very sexual, daring, being not necessarily pushing himself towards honor, though there is that questionable scene in the first season where he does that. But, he's very overt. He's very like, hey, I'm interested in you, even though he is not, because he just is so straightforward, because he thinks no one could ever love him, because he hates himself. It's his whole thing, his whole shtick. And we get more of a glimpse in this season on why that might be. But, that was always his thing. There's just kind of playing with John a bit, like pushing her buttons, and not necessarily expecting that to lead anywhere, and just being amused by how flustered she is by all that and annoyed she is by that. But in this season, it just, it starts swaying the other way for several reasons, and he cannot handle that.
There's a lot more back and forth this time.
Oh yeah, and it becomes straightforward in regards to John at a certain point in the show that we later get to, I guess.
This,
but yeah,
this leads.
It's the first inkling of that scene.
Yeah, but this is interesting because it leads into a talk about Jean's past, about how her parents were Ruthven's students, and that she was left in the care of the Marquis d'Aptier, and there's
her parents got killed.
Yeah,
I think we haven't learned that in the previous season, right? Did she say that her parents were killed?
I don't think so, but when she's talking about this, she mentions it a bit later on. She talks about how Chloe is apparently even longer lived than Ruthven, and that's why she's like a big sister to her. Yeah,
she's the typical 1,000-year-old or more vampire that looks like a fucking child.
Yeah,
stereotype.
But that sort of plays into Chloe's character, because we see a scene, I think, later on, where it's a flashback where Ruthven is trying to do to her what he did to Noe at the end of the first season, and she's like, "Yo, back off."
Fuck, back off, little boy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And
That's
that's
cool.
the moment where you're like, "Oh, now we know what she's about."
Yeah. She's actually very strong, kind of, in her own right. So it's cool, yeah.
And then the next morning, Vanitas has kind of made his escape. And John is so happy that he's well enough to be up and about. And the switch flips immediately where she's like, "What did I try to do with him?"
Yeah. She gets red.
But it's okay,
Right.
because he's back to normal. So that makes everything she did all right.
Yeah.
Good logic, lady. Good logic.
Yeah, and then we move back to, I guess, to the castle event of things, where,
Yeah.
with Chloe, with Noe. Why do their names have to be so similar? And Johan. And we see that Chloe has been apparently in league with, so far, if you don't want to count Ruthwin, which we don't know yet about the extent of his full goals. We get filled on that a bit more into this season, where he was like saying that, at least in the beginning, when he was still young, his main goal was like to end the strife between humans and vampires. And then something happened to him. We see that in the flashbacks between him and Chloe. And he says something along the lines of, "No, they all have to die." It's not clear who he means. It's not clear if he's talking about the humans or if he's talking about the vampire side of things. He just says they all need to die. Or no, I don't know if he says that, or if he says like I have to end them, or I have to start over, something like that. But it's not quite clear yet. It just means he has become radical in one way. We just don't know how his will is supposed to manifest and what that all entails and everything. We just know that he wants to make use of the machine that Chloe is building. And yeah, so aside from him, our other big antagonist, who is ostensibly causing all the curse bearers to exist, is Nania, the head of Charlatan, who already make an appearance in this season when they have like this, or they get trapped in a time loop, right?
Yeah.
When everything suddenly turns into a Van Gogh painting, and then the fucking carnival appears and shit like that. And, then Nania appears and talks to Noe again. I don't know when he learned her name. That must have happened in the previous season. It was like he just called her by name. Like, wait, did we learn that name already? That doesn't sound familiar.
I think someone calls her as such. Yeah, my note says episode 6. So apparently the name was I forget who says it.
Yeah, but she probably herself says it at some point. And it's not a real name, really.
There's so much obfuscation of names and true names, and that's one of the themes
real
of the
names,
show.
malnomens, all that shit. Yeah, and
I don't think I said this previously. The word they use in Japanese, I don't remember what it is. It's definitely not malnomen, but that's such a good translation. It makes so much sense.
Okay. Yeah, it's also a cool word.
I just really like smart translation choices like that.
Yes, me too. But yeah, she apparently is working together with Chloe. To what end? Nania's end seems to be pretty straightforward, because usually she just wants to take vampires' true names, and turn them into curse bearers. But with some vampires, she can't do that by force, apparently. Or she doesn't want to. If they're very particularly powerful vampires, like Chloe, for example, or like, for example, Noe, she has to manipulate them into uttering a wish to just basically, as a trait, give them their true name freely, willingly. And that's kind of what she does with Chloe, and what she did with Johan, as it turns out, Chloe's servant.
Kind of reminds me of is it something like a vampire can't set foot in your home unless you invite it in? It seems like it's kind of drawing upon that same sort of mythos.
Might as well be the inspiration. It's also a bit, of course, it's a Faustian deal, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the basic gist. But yeah, also that it feels like she can't. For some vampires, she either can't or doesn't want to do it by force, or can only do it once a certain wish has been uttered. And I gotta say, just from the design approach alone, I love Nania because she's so fucking eerie. It's just like this black, weird charcoal creature with like these glaring white eyes, like this nightmare creature. And her laugh in this fucking first half when she appears and in several scenes. And the the nightmare visions she gives these characters are fucking terrifying. Like, she's a really cool, menacing villain, even more so when we learn who she really is in this season, and it's really awesome. Like, I liked her appearance in this, and she doesn't really appear for like the last third, which is like kind of a new arc in this season, but she's very prominent in like this first thing, and is basically always looking over Chloe's shoulder. So yeah, that was cool.
Oh, it was definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, what you know, they have a bit of a talk, and we get a lot of flashbacks to Chloe's past and everything. We at some point learn that Johann is the Beast because he uttered the wish. What was it? Was to protect? It turned out that the Beast itself wasn't real to begin with. Like, it was a story made up by the church to cover up the purge of vampires after the war had already ended between humans and vampires. But since those stories stoked the superstitious violence of the people of Gévaudan, and that kind of started focusing on Chloe at a certain point, because she is like this elusive character living up in the mountains and shit like that, and they considered her a witch, and was like, maybe she's whatever, the Beast. Not Johann. I'm calling him Johann all the time, but Johann is the guy.
Jean-Jacques.
I mean Jean-Jacques. Yes, sorry.
No, don't worry. For a second. Well, Johann was one of Dante's pals.
Yeah, Johann was one of Dante's, but they both start with J, so I was confused. Yes, Johann was one of Dante's pals, who's also great. He's fun. But yeah, of course, talking about Jean-Jacques. Jean-Jacques is Chloe's friend since his childhood and servant and everything, and he loves her, definitely. But yeah, he decided to become a real version of the Beast to steer the focus and the ire of the people of Gévaudan away from Chloe, and thus protect her from harm. He was basically like her bodyguard, and also what would you call that?
Fall guy? Huh?
Yeah, I guess, kind of. Yeah, fall guy in a way.
I know you're looking for a specific word, and I can't pull it out of my head.
Yes, me neither. But you know what I mean. He was like trying to make the myth reality, so people could focus, like the fights could focus on him, and he could protect her with her strength that way. But for that he needed to make use of, or needed to utter a wish towards Nania, and of course give up his true name, which basically turned him into the Beast and the curse bearer and stuff like that. And you know, most of this until we learned that most of the story, it seems like Chloe is doing all that to create this machine. What is it called?
World Alteration Engine.
Yes, World Alteration Engine.
Or excuse me, just Alteration Engine. My bad.
Yeah.
Which is powered by the World Formula.
Yes, exactly. And she's trying. It's not really clear. She's just apparently trying to maybe restructure. What did she say? What she wanted to do with that? Initially, what do you think she wants to do with that?
Initially, she became a vampire due to an alteration in the world formula, and then her father was trying
to make her human again. Right.
Yes.
It was her father's wish to make her human again. And he focused his whole research and everything to build a machine that could do that. So that's her purpose. She made that her purpose. She wants, it's my father's dying wish. It's the only thing he ever wanted. So I want to make that wish happen. Right? Yeah, not for my sake necessarily, for me to become human, but because my father wanted it and because I love my father and everything. So yeah, it seems that is what she wanted to do. But at a certain point, that changed. And that was the exact moment when Nania manipulated Johann into... not Johann, again. Manipulated Jean-Jacques into becoming like a protector for Chloe. Like, manipulated him to become the Beast. And yeah, then Chloe's goal changed.
Because a little before this, Dante is talking about how the Dapsiers were conducting research and trying to create the alteration engine. and he finally, after at knife point several times, shares that he's acting under orders from Sir Francis Varney, which I found particularly interesting because that's a reference to the book Varney the Vampire, or The Feast of Blood, as it's called. And this other character, the Clockwork Fiend, the Marquis Machina. And then this all leads into the talk about Chloe's father and trying to restore her humanity. And that's when she finally meets Ruthven, who introduces himself as August. Which is interesting because this is the scene where he kind of tries to manipulate her, and he refers to her as Madam, and she refers to him as Boy. Whoops.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, Ruthven, August, thinks that the world formula could be used to, make things better for the world and whatnot.
Yeah, and the iteration engine to that extent, right?
Yes.
He wants to use Chloe's engine, or Chloe's father's engine, to basically rewrite the world. I don't know it's not clear what his ultimate goal is, like I said, if he wants to turn all vampires into humans, all humans into vampires, or whatever, or just change the structure of the world in general.
Yeah.
To just get rid of strife and of conflicts and everything. But, that's what his goal seems to be, at least up to a certain point.
Yeah, here we go. August tells Chloe of a fearful life on the outside for vampires, because Chloe hasn't given much thought about the outside world at this point. No. Because she only knows Gévaudan.
Yes, which changes when she, John comes into her life, which is probably the most important part of her story, where she becomes friends. They become friends. Chloe becomes a bit of a caretaker of John, and then John runs off at some point into the woods, and that's the first time that Chloe kind of gets out of her castle, and then they drop down in this gorgeous flower field, and she first recognizes how big the world kind of is and how vast the sky is and everything, and it's the most important moment to her, which was great. In general, it would have been nice to spend either a whole or the entire half of an episode with John and Chloe, which we didn't get, to understand why they mean so much to each other. It's clear why John means so much to Chloe, because for a brief moment, like I said, she made her taste freedom and see the most beautiful view she's ever seen, but we don't see enough of John's view of their past time together to fully empathize with her caring for Chloe as this surrogate big sister, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the view of her past is, at this point, really skewed, because what she says and what she does are two different things, but I have to kill Chloe is what it comes down to initially at first.
Yeah, as it is, John trying to save Chloe feels more like an obligation than something done out of love, maybe? Yeah. Because she failed the first time around and is filled with regret. But, it's a mini gripe. The show yells at me enough hey, John really cares for Chloe, but it doesn't really tell me why she cares so much. That's all that I was hung up a bit on, where it's yeah, I get it. I get why John means so much to Chloe. I don't necessarily get why Chloe means so much to John, but yeah, like you said, it's also maybe there's more in the flashbacks from John's side of things, and it's just, it's just a regret thing and so on. So, but yeah, it's still a good scene, and it's one of those things where it's oh yeah, I get where Chloe is coming from and how the world opens up to her, and that also plays into her relationship to August/Ruthven, where in the beginning she was so focused on her father's wishes, and then it's oh no, here's another person I might be able to help and who is interested in what I'm doing, and maybe there's more to this. Maybe I can do more good with this than I initially thought if I'm not too focused on myself. That gets turned around again when Ruthven has his weird turn, which we still don't know what that caused, where he loses his eye and everything. And
yeah, because he reappears to her with his face very bandaged.
And then he tries to bite her, the scene you mentioned earlier, or he does, right? And she's fuck off, you're not going to impose your wish, your command on me. You're not gonna just make me use my knowledge to make that machine work. I'm not a tool for you. I'm more senior than you. Yeah. I've lived longer. Fuck off, little boy. Fuck off with your misguided ambition. And yeah, that was a cool scene. So that's kind of when their relationship broke off.
Yeah, then he kind of disappears. He ascends to the Senate, and Chloe chooses to continue her research. She has her encounter with Nania, who says, "Hey, Jean's dead. Maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this world is a nightmare?" And she has this conflict. Chloe has this conflict of, which world is the less worse between the two. And this is where she finally activates the alteration engine, and now the time loop begins.
But at some point, all the parties, of course, accumulate in the castle and try to stop her from doing the thing that he does. But when she actually activates the machine is not necessarily doing what we expected it to do, or what Nania expected it to do.
So reality kind of breaks.
Yeah, because what Chloe actually intends to do is give Nania a corporeal body, so she can fucking kill her. Because she is absolutely not fine with Nania basically manipulating and laying her hands on Jean-Jacques, the one friend that stayed by her side the entire time. John left at some point, Ruthven left her at some point, her father died. She was all alone most of her life, but Jean-Jacques stayed by her side all the time, was dedicated. And basically Nania put him into a position where Chloe will probably lose him. And she's so fucking pissed at that. She's so fucking angry.
God, there's a scene where she's choking Nania out. And says, "As I told you, I am a terribly jealous woman." And it's like, yo!
Yes! Most fucking great scene. It's like, oh, fuck. Here we go. And then her plan spectacularly backfires.
Yeah.
Because becoming temporary corporeal makes Nania remember her true identity as the former queen of the vampires. And which we learned that the queen was killed before, I think, or was turned into a curse bearer or something, but I think we didn't learn. Something was up with the queen, but we didn't know that it was Nania.
Yeah, we learned that the queen may or may not be dead.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. It wasn't really clear what happened to her. We could have probably guessed that maybe, when they bring something like that up and our main antagonist is a woman, then maybe that is the queen. Who knows? But I didn't put two and two together until that moment happened. So I was surprised by it. I was like, oh, shit.
And boy, Vanitas was on the nose in the first season when he said he believed the queen was giving rise to the curse bearers.
Yes, absolutely. That's what she does, even though not willingly, probably. She lost herself. I mean, she's herself is a curse bearer, apparently. Like, it's a Nania, and Nania is her melnomen. Like, it's not like her true name was taken from her, apparently, and that's why she turned into something that could take other names away. But the question is, who did that to her in the first place? Was it Ruthven? Was it the weird guy, the maybe big brother of Luca we see in one scene? Not sure. We'll probably get filtered on that in later seasons. But yeah, she's definitely Nania. She's the head of Charlatan. And she unleashes her full power for but a moment. Enough to take away Chloe's true name by force and turn her into a curse bearer that tears the realm of Gévaudan apart. And makes it into this twisted nightmare world thing. But thankfully, the best character of the show, Roland, arrives to save the day. Much to Vanitas' chagrin. But yeah, also Olivier's weapon is a fucking chainsaw sword? Badass.
That's right. Yeah.
And then, yeah, of course, we have this big battle and everything. And ultimately, Vanitas is thankfully able to cure both Chloe and Jean-Jacques and return their true names to them and turn them to normal vampires again. Which I didn't expect. I expected at least one of them to die. So I was really happy when none of them did.
Yeah, big same. No one died at all.
I think so. Yeah, maybe some.
Not even Astolfo.
Yeah, that's weird.
he juiced himself up while fighting Vanitas, and he just got knocked out. And I think he has a flashback about his father telling him about his duty as a member of House Granatom,
Mm,
and what's his retainer's name? Marco just kind
mm.
of takes him, and they just go.
Yeah. But yeah, thankfully happy end for Chloe and Jean-Jacques, which I was really glad about. Then I mean we didn't spend that much time with these characters. It was basically half a season, a bit more maybe.
Mm.
But they very quickly became endearing to me. I was like, oh man, I hope nothing bad happens to them, but probably will. And then nope, they got saved. I was like, yay! That makes me happy.
Yeah, man. I mean, how much time did we spend on them? 6 episodes. It still felt pretty substantive.
6 or 7, I'm not sure. I feel like the final arc we get is not the entire second half of this season. We have a bridge over episode that's probably the best episode in this season, but we'll get to that in a moment. But I think it's 7 episodes for the first thing, and then we get the rest. But I'm not sure. But yeah,
Yeah, you
cool,
might
cool.
be right. I think so.
Yeah, first arc of this core was really good. I don't know how you felt about it overall. I enjoyed it. I think it was briskly paced. We learned a lot about the past of certain characters. Like, I mean, mostly for Chloe, who was a new character and probably won't reappear again, but still was there. But we also learned stuff about. I think we learned a bit more about Noe. We learned a lot more about Jan's past, and slight glimpses at Vanitas, but most of that comes in the next arc.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was cool, and there was some big reveals, like Nanya being the queen of the vampires and everything, and who we learn more about Ruthven, one of our other maybe antagonists. So yeah, it's cool. Was really really well directed, well structured. I was never bored. That these episodes just flew by.
See.
Do you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. See, and this is what I like about stories like this, because we got to know the new characters decently well, and we kept the story going. See, that's what I want when I watch stuff, and I'm specifically being like this because Bones also worked on a certain other show that's not nearly as well paced and has way too many characters. So I look at this and I'm like, how many characters did we get to know in this half? 4?
New ones?
5? Yeah, new characters.
Important ones too, I would even say, if at all. Like Jean-Jacques and Chloe, and I guess
they're the important ones.
but
yeah, they are the important ones. But
yeah.
we also had little bits of Astolfo in there, but it felt like enough. And it was enough to keep things going, so that I didn't feel like I was waiting for things to happen.
It also comes to what the source material is giving you, and I assume that's the same for this, right? But yeah, so I would put the blame on Horikoshi, I guess, but also you can streamline that shit if you're adapting stuff.
Right.
So,
but
right? You could just, I agree with you, like the training arc of My Hero Academia Season 5, for example, you could have just taken that out. Because they said, hey, these characters have gained a couple of new powers, that's it. And didn't have to do it. I mean, these battles were fun to me, but you're right. Like, they put the story to a grinding halt. But again, that's also classic shonen. I would say Vanitas isn't that, so I expect different things from different stories. But overall, I'm with you. Yeah, it's great that Vanitas is moving along so quickly. And it goes even quicker in the next arc in terms of big reveals.
I just want what is ostensibly an action show to keep going. Like, I don't know how much I'm going to talk about Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai when it's all done, but boy, that last arc, it really goes on. And I mean, that's
not in a positive way.
And I mean, that's not to say things aren't constantly happening, but it really, really goes on. And I think looking at, I had, every so often been looking at where it is in comparison to the manga. Yeah, there's a lot of chapters toward the end. So, not necessarily a structural issue, but, it cut things down a little.
Adaptation is not easy. And
no,
if
it's
you
not.
just go, frame by frame, you're sometimes doing too much. But anyway, let's return to our vampires du jour, who are as horny as ever. Like,
oh, without a doubt.
At the end of this arc, there is like, Jan and Vanitas are meeting up, And she's, super happy that everything turned out. And that he thanks him, of course, for saving Chloe. And then he suddenly overpowers him and sucks his blood and kisses his, or licks his bloody face, which is probably the closest we have come to see a gesture of true passion in this show. Like, really, John going for it. And Vanitas, like I said before, cannot deal with that because he falls hard for Jean at this moment. And first of all, it's like, is he stuck in the memories of someone important maybe dying to him? Because we get first couple of glimpses at a certain very important person to the story in general in that moment. But also, no, he really fell for John. Holy shit, like a ton of bricks. It's amazing. But because he's an emotional idiot, he doesn't know what to make of it, right? He has never fallen in love. The concept of someone loving him is completely alien to him. And then the other person in that mix is Noe, who is a complete idiot too and doesn't know what to do. So they just go to Lord Orlok and try to oh god, Vanitas is sick. He has like this weird sickness, his heart aches, and the more he describes it, the faces of the people in the office just sink, and they're like, get the fuck out of here! And Noah and Vanitas are really distraught because like, no, I don't get it, why are you throwing us out?
There's a pain in my heart, oh!
And then we get this great exchange between Vanitas, Roland, and Olivier. Vanitas like stumbles over them at a cafe and just reluctantly sits down because he overhears that Olivier knows about romantic things and ladies and stuff like that. And then Vanitas does this typical thing where it's like, this is about a friend of mine. Yeah. And Roland and Olivier immediately are like,
Well, I mean, it's great because he starts off like that and they're like that. But then his narrative starts to shift because he starts losing his mind. At
some point, he changes from him to his to my and stuff like that, right? He changes.
Roland's like, oh, that's simple. It's love. And Vanitas is like,
he's just like completely dead.
Roland points out that Jean must feel the same way about him too, and he's gone.
He can't deal with that. It's amazing. Like the whole scene, like the whole part of that episode is incredible. Like Olivier can barely keep it together, and I definitely could not. Like it's hilarious all the way through, but you also get a nice moment of genuine shock on everyone's face when Vanitas just outright states that the idea of someone loving him seems revolting to him because he hates himself so much. Like Roland and Noe seem really taken aback by that. You're like, what the fuck? And Olivier's just like, oh god, you need to go to therapy, dude. But yeah, it's an amazing theme, and it endeared Roland even more to my heart than the show already had. It's just like, holy shit. The way he reacts to it is like, you don't have to worry about Vanitas. I can God's love is all encompassing. And that pisses Vanitas off so much.
My favorite, I love it. It's like, oh, it's my good friend Vincent. And it's like, and then when Noe pops out from behind the person sitting at the next table, it's like, hey, Gilbert, I think you should go ahead.
Yeah, I think
and Olivier is like, dude, I knew who they were the whole time.
Yeah.
So, and Roland's like, it was worth a try.
It's just fantastic. Just all the way through that half episode where they do all that shit is just, it killed me. It was just, I was laughing the entire way through. Hey, this is shit. And also the follow-up to that, Jan goes to Luca, or is sitting with Luca having tea and shit like that, and Luca is starting to suspect things and asks her about, wait, why are you talking about Vanitas in such a different way, and she's like, I don't know, I feel different towards him. It's like my heart starts beating every time I'm talking about him, and I feel very nice, and he feels so, and he was so warm and everything, and he was such a good person. And you have to Chloe. I don't know if Domi is the one that says that, but it seems like you're in love with him. And John is like, oh, that's what it is. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm probably in love with Vanitas now. And Lucas like, no! And Domi's like, no, not him!
Lucas says it, and Jean just blushes bright as a tomato, and she doesn't know what to say, and Luca just loses it. He's gone, he's done.
it gets even worse than that, because when Luca tries to get Domi to help him with this situation, Jean at some point says like, man, I think the real problem is if I get to see Vanitas the next time, I wouldn't know how to control my urges. I would just like to fucking put him on the ground and mount him or shit. Like a picture of a lion appears next to her.
Yeah, it was...
She just shocks Luca with verbalizing her forceful lust for Vanitas so much that the poor boy temporarily loses his grip on reality.
Well, Dominique loses her mind too. It's just like, this is going real well between all of this. She says, because I wrote this quote down, that if this feeling continues before I can meet Vanitas again, that I might consummate our love the moment our eyes meet. Mm-hmm. It's like, ugh!
Yeah! Yeah, you go for it, girl. Holy shit. I love this turnaround on Jen's character where she's like completely going into the other direction now. It's amazing.
Dominique can't, she can't. She just can't believe how vulgar that is. But Jean says it's how her mother got her father. Everyone's like, what?
And of course it makes total sense. It's like, she didn't want to think about, falling for that guy before because he seemed so, such an asshole. But now he has done something really good for her and she recognizes his true character and it's like, oh, then it's totally fine. I love him. Okay, I'm just gonna get him. It's like, all right, okay, here we go.
It keeps going though, because Dominique points out how Vanitas says, he wouldn't have interest in a woman who would love him, but that only hardens Jean's determination because she's learned how to act from the date they had overall. Dominique is just like, oh, okay, all right, and Luca just screams, "What date?"
Yeah. These whole two scenes are just from beginning to end perfect. And I also love that Dominique at some point is like, I don't understand why you would go for that when Noe is right there, and it's like, but I don't want you to go for Noe because I want to go for Noe.
Right.
Right. It's amazing. Like all of these characters just clashing with each other in this romantic. I've been harping so much on romantic comedy, right? Because that's not my genre. But if you do it like that, if you do like a great fantasy story and then put romantic shit like this in there, romantic comedy like this, where, hey, you have established characters, you have with character motivations and everything, and then on the side of that, you have this great romantic subplot where there's something real developing between two of our main characters, which are both complex, interesting characters, aside from the will they, won't they stuff. I'm all for that shit. I laughed all the way through these scenes, and I'm so rooting for them to become a thing. So I know that won't happen because this is a tragedy, probably. But man, yes, give me that shit. Give me that romantic comedy shit. That's absolutely up my alley. I love this. I love this whole episode. So yeah, but then shit gets serious again at the very end. So the joys don't last long for our characters.
Yeah, there's a scene between Noe and Vanitas where Noe sort of envisions this scenario where he would have ended up fighting Vanitas instead in Gévaudan instead of Astolfo. And Vanitas is like, what's the meaning of this thought exercise? What are you talking about? Which Vanitas, to which Noe says, I'm glad it wasn't a chasseur I met on that day in La Baleine, but rather a doctor who's a vampire specialist. And Vanitas is just like, huh? What? But Noe continues saying, of course I still don't like you, but nevertheless, I'm glad you're here just the way you are. So,
they're also always doing like this teasing of maybe a romance between those two, but considering that Vanitas and Jean are really going for it now, this is more of a friendship thing now, like between Noe and Vanitas, I guess, or for the Fujoshi, maybe they have the teasing in there as well. So we'll see, maybe something will come off of that. They definitely play with that, and they have so in the first season when Noe and Vanitas have that little dance and everything. So that's definitely in there. But I don't know, considering how anime in general goes with these kind of things. I feel like they won't go farther than that. It's probably just gonna stay, in terms of romance, a real romance between Jean and Vanitas. And maybe Noe and Domi. Who knows? But they also have this brother-sister thing going, so that's a bit icky on the side. But hey, adopted.
Yeah,
Not real blood
don't worry about
related.
it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, at the end of the episode, a certain character appears that was already in a flashback, or at least the back of his head was in a flashback of Vanitas. And he is doing some shit with Domi, and we are not quite sure what yet, but he's somehow manipulating her and stuff like that. And then cutting off a strand of her hair and sending it to Noe to get him to meet up in an amusement park. And we get a bit more of backstory on Domi and Noe, what happened after Louis died, right? After he was decapitated and everything. And we learn a lot more about the shit that went down, like Noe being completely down. Domi couldn't deal with that. Like, she even cut her own hair to look like Louis because she thought that would make Noe happy, since she thinks everyone wanted her to have died instead of her brother, which is really sad because they dropped like the fact, I don't know, have they done that before? Like, did they drop the fact that twins are considered bad luck in the vampire world before in the first season? Did they mention that offhand at some point?
I don't think they did.
Because if they did, that would have been a nice follow-up, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it feels a bit out of nowhere. It's like, hey, no. I mean, you could see it, I guess, in terms of their faces and everything, that Domi and Louis were twins, and that is considered bad luck in the vampire world. So one of them was supposed to be hidden from the world, and that was Louis.
Yeah, and Veronica kind of drops a bomb on Dominique.
Yeah, it's her big sister, and
saying
she seems like an asshole, a righteous asshole.
I mean, we got a little bit of a glimpse of that in the first season.
That's true.
This time around, she like out and says, "I do not have a little brother. Moreover, he should have been slain the day he was born. You should be thankful he was allowed to live for this long." And it's like, lady.
But yeah, we get a bit more backstory in her and what all the shit that went down with her, and, you know, her further relationship to Noe and everything. So that's cool and interesting. But the character that we saw that was introduced is Mikhail, who is somewhat Vanitas' little brother. Not really. Also, again, not blood related. But he was kind of an orphan. His backstory is really fucked up. Like, dressed up like a girl by his mom prostitute who sold him to her best customers. Great stuff. And then he gets picked up by the church and also picked up by Dr. Moreau, the same guy who experimented on Vanitas, you know, the numbered children, because he tried to enable them to use the books of Vanitas. Apparently, there's a second book of Vanitas, which we learn also in here. And Vanitas has one, Mihail has the other one. And I don't know, did they kill off Moreau in the previous season? I don't remember. They fought him, but I don't know if he died.
I'm pretty sure he escaped.
Nah, that's a bummer. I hoped he would die, because we already knew he was a piece of shit, but that gets verified in his flashback scenes in this season. Like, Vanitas and Mihail and the about 70 other kids he killed were only tools for him to open the books of Vanitas, and it's, Jesus, what a garbage man. But yeah, we get introduced, and Mihail is trying to, or manipulates Noe by putting Domi into danger to suck his blood, and basically, because Noe can, by sucking someone's blood, he can look into their past. That's his gift. That's his ability. So he sees Mihail's whole past, and he sees a part of Vanitas' past, and how they escaped Moreau, which was by the hand of the original Vanitas, the vampire of the Blue Moon, which from now on we, I guess, should call Luna to avoid confusion. Also, they don't seem to be really fond of the name Vanitas anyway, so I don't know how they got the name Luna. I guess maybe through our Vanitas gave them that, or Mihail gave them that. I don't know.
Yeah, taking notes for these next couple episodes was weird. I think in my version of the notes, to avoid, for the sake of clarity, I refer to the human boy Vanitas just as a number 69 until it was more convenient to switch back to referring to him as Vanitas.
But yeah, Luna has a real cool design. You rarely see characters with completely night black skin in anime. And yeah, Luna becomes kind of a surrogate father for Michal and Vanitas and wants to help the two boys to survive the effects of their experiments, which will ultimately kill Michal and Vanitas otherwise, as we learn. And yeah, then something happened. Like, for some reason, Luna dies or Vanitas kills him. We don't know at that point what exactly, but that's what Michal wants to learn from Vanitas. He wants to convince Noe to suck Vanitas' blood, to learn, to basically go look into his memories and learn why their father had to die, why Luna had to die. Because really, all Michael seems to want is get his little family back together, because he's so damaged and everything, and that was probably the only happy time he really had. So that's what he wants, and that's his main drive for now, anyway. And yeah, so we get a bit more glimpse of Vanitas' past. Like, one of the reasons for Vanitas' self-hatred is probably because his mother died in childbirth, apparently. So maybe he feels like he killed her. And at least there's an inkling in that. And one of his parents, I think, was part of a carnival of a traveling, which makes me immediately think charlatan. And I'm like, okay, we'll see where that goes. But yeah, we haven't been really filled in on that part of his backstory yet. But yeah, there's after that, and I'm rushing up things because we have to wrap that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We have a big fight between Noe and Vanitas, really, because it feels like Noe is trying to he doesn't even say that he necessarily wants to suck Vanitas' blood, but Vanitas definitely wants to stop him from doing that. Like, he even pulls a gun on him and shoots him, because he has programmed himself or put a hypnosis, a spell on him, whatever, that makes kill anyone who's trying to look into his memories. Why exactly that is, I don't know if we get really filled in on it, or if we're sure why he did that, to protect something, if it's only his own vulnerability, but something, right? He hypnotized himself so he would kill anyone who tried to look into his memories. Right. So there's this big fight between him and Noe, because Noe tries to look into his memories to protect Domi. And yeah, that happens. Shit goes back and forth. That fight is awesome, by the way. It looks really good. Of course, as expected from Bones. But yeah, then once both our characters kind of lie battered and bruised at the ground at a certain point, the true obvious villain from the first season, like one of the most obvious, probably the ultimate puppet master, packed from the get-go, as such, reveals himself. Domi's grandfather, who was also the teacher of Noe and everything, and who has made an appearance in Shadows and so on. I think we never saw his full face in the first season, but he's the one who killed Louis, I think, and set things into motion, apparently. The former Marquis de Sade, or Comte de Saint-Germain, as he goes by now, which are both very familiar names.
Dude has about 3 different names.
Yes, the shapeless one also.
The shapeless one, Marquis de Sade, Monsieur le Comte.
Yeah, but just like Mihail, he seems to want to look into maybe Vanitas' memories, or in general, find a way to revive Luna. We don't know why yet, what his ultimate goal is, if that is the only thing. Maybe he loves Luna, I don't know. We don't know that much about Luna yet, and their origin and everything, and how they died and stuff like that. So that's basically what he does, and he picks up Mihail, who is really fucked up at that point, and leaves the rest to sit with the fallout of all that. And yeah, I think we have after this, we have this small get-together at the very end, between Mihail, Vanitas and Noe, where Michael kind of reveals that he wanted their family of 3 to be reunited. He feels like Vanitas is the only one who understands his pain, and that they could end each other's life if they ever turned into a full inhuman monster because of the books, right? But I think Vanitas doesn't want to put that burden on Mihail.
Yeah.
He's fine with putting it on Noe, though.
Yeah,
which is a bit harsh.
Yeah, a little bit. But
yeah, but that's kind of his thought process. I'm going to turn into a monster anyway, but I want to be with a person that I can rely on to end me then and to kill me. And that is, that is what the story has been saying it will do from the very first episode on. It's that was Noe says, I didn't I didn't at that point. I didn't know I would have to slay Vanitas at some point, right? And this is what they're outright saying here. At some point, the book, and we see Mihail being almost turned into a complete monster by the book. It's at some point it's starting to consume him and turning him into this beast. But they can pull him back from that. But that might also happen to Vanitas, and then maybe Noé has to kill him so that he doesn't become completely inhuman, which is the last thing he wants. But yeah, it's a bit harsh that he puts that burden on Noé, especially considering that that is what this all might lead to. But it also means Noé has his complete trust, which is, I guess, nice. It means that they have become friends, even though they sometimes can't stand each other. But yeah.
I mean, Mihail is also like resolved at this point to bring Luna back himself.
Yes,
so
exactly. Without Vanitas and his memories and whatever happened, without knowing what happened between Vanitas and Luna in their final moments. So kind of somber ending to this arc, I guess, to this season, because we don't really know where we go from here. But we learned a lot of dark shit of the past. There were a lot of big reveals here. We now have 3 clear-cut antagonists, I guess, though all seem to have different motivations. And I wonder when, their paths will coalesce or converge. And that will be interesting. And I wonder how many seasons it will take them to get there. But we have a lot of different parties now, interesting parties. And I'm really excited to see what this all leads to. I really love this season, John. I don't know how you felt about it. Did you have any gripes with it at some points, or were you like from beginning to end, holy shit, this is like super well paced and the story is exciting? I don't know. That's how I felt about it.
I really, really enjoyed it from beginning to end. Like I was waiting every week to be like, okay, what happens next? I was so enthralled by this. I'd say I want more of it, but I think it's actually caught up to where the manga is.
Really? Oh, that's bad.
Oh.
No!
So, the latest chapter, I think, released just last month. And yeah, it's going to be a minute before we get like a lot more story. And it's going to be another few minutes before we get more anime of it.
So how many chapters between the things they covered and the one that just released are there? Like how many?
I think maybe like just 1 or 2.
I mean, I don't know how fast the publication of these chapters happens, like how fast the creator draws these mangas and everything and writes them. So depending on how fast-paced that manga is and that the publication of that manga is, the release of that manga is, we might not have to wait too long, maybe a year or 2 or something like that.
Okay, yeah, the anime ends at chapter 55, and then there was 56 and 57 after that, and 57 is current.
Oof, okay, yeah, that's not a lot. We need at least, I guess, 20 to 25 chapters.
I believe, well, from what I can see here, the pace really, really picked up in this season, because the first one ended at chapter 11. And we went through chapter 55 in the second season. So yeah,
Jesus,
they really kept it going. So there's probably some granular details we missed out on, but they kept it going, and I feel like they did a pretty good service to the story they were trying to adapt.
And I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Maybe there was some, more character development filler stuff, but I feel like we got all the important beats in there. So
Yeah.
But now I want to check out the manga, but because they have to had omitted something, like because the first season didn't feel slow paced.
No.
Like that. So I feel like this season was particularly quick in terms of how it went about with the story beats, but it didn't feel rushed. So they must have just skipped something in between. And I wonder what they skipped. There was like a couple of one-off stories, maybe, more case of the week shit, because that's more what the first season felt like. It felt more like we had, we had the stuff with Amelia, who has some nice occasional appearances in this season as well, which I enjoyed. I like because, she was one of the characters who introduced us to the show. But also, we had the stuff with Jeanne, but then Vanitas and Noe go off and investigate, the disappearance of some of the vampires and stumble over the Bureau stuff. It all felt a bit more like episodical in certain parts. But this season felt very like two separate, bigger arcs that were heavily connected to the background of our characters. So I wonder if they cut out some more Case of the Week stuff, maybe.
Could be.
Now I want to check out the manga. I mean, I can for all the chapters that were already adapted by the anime. I hope it doesn't put the show in a negative light for me afterwards, because, like, man, I would have liked to see that animated. But also, maybe they shifted around things.
That could be.
That could be the case, that they kept some things that happened earlier in the manga, and they're like, no, we're going to put that later. And maybe they already have enough stuff for the anime, and they're like, no, we're going to just put this here and put this there and put that in the next core. I don't know. Maybe the stuff, the reveal of Mihaela and stuff like that happens way later in the manga than it does here. Who knows? I'll try to find out, because now I'm interested. I'm surprised that they went through so much material apparently in the second core.
I mean, at least we know Mochizuki has some stuff cooked up, because look at all the things we have set up. We have Ruthven has his one command to issue to Noe. Vanitas is interested in checking out what's going on with the Comte de Saint-Germain. We've got Dante, Johann, and Riche reporting back to Count Orlok because he wants words with them for some reason. So there's a lot of potential stuff to cover coming up. So even if it takes however long, I'm looking forward to what comes next. I'm looking forward to if it has another adaptation, and if not, then I keep saying there's other shows whose comics I want to check out. I feel like this is one I actually really would like to sit down with and read.
Yeah, me too. Especially if we don't get another anime adaptation in time. If we do, if like next 2 or 3 years they announce something, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait for that. But if they don't, I would be like, yeah, I'm just gonna check out the manga instead. Or once the manga has finished, maybe it was like, okay, I'm gonna check that story out again. And hey, if they announce another anime season like 3 years or 4 years or whatever, then of course I get the pleasure of rewatching these first 2 courses again, because they were a lot of fun. So that's great. Speaking of which, where can people watch this show, John?
Pretty close to literally everywhere.
It's a good thing.
It's on Crunchyroll, Funimation, Hulu. If you live international, it's on Wakanim. It's like, good luck not finding where to watch this.
And yeah, you should definitely check out this show, because both of these cores or seasons, whatever you want to call them, have been a blast in my eyes, and apparently in John's eyes. John, any final words on the second core of Vanitas in specifically?
I think we hit everything. Like, I really liked where the story went, and all of the background we got filled in on for like a lot of the characters. So now obviously there's still little details to be filled in, I'm sure, but we've really set the stage for some really interesting stuff to come. But yeah, there's a lot to really enjoy about this show, and I think it comes with a pretty strong recommendation from both of us.
Absolutely. And that is a wrap on the 129th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter @AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
So long, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
The delicious second course. Also goofy wolves?
And the final chapter of a Titanic tale. Maybe for real this time?